Hello, welcome back. In this segment, I'm going to talk about a very interesting discovery made by Professor Michael Rabin back in early 1980s. He discovered this oblivious transfer protocol idea. The core of the idea is that, let's say Alice is having some message M. She wants to send to Bob, but there is a caveat. The caveat is that she should not know whether Bob received the message. Okay, meaning she should not know whether Bob was able to decrypt her message successfully. So that's basically the oblivious part of the protocol that I would like to discuss today. Okay, the sender, in this case Alice, first generates an RSA public and private key pairs. You may recall RSA before watching this lecture. Okay, so Alice first generates an RSA public and private key pair, and then she encrypts a message M using her public key. This is quite unusual. Usually, RSA encryption is based on public key of the recipient. In this case, she's encrypting the message M using her own public key. That means if we assume RSA is secure and factoring is hard, no one can decrypt the message C and extract message M. Okay, assuming E and N are all properly chosen. And then Alice goes ahead and sends the ciphertext C. As you can see, the ciphertext C is over here. Alice sends the ciphertext C and her public key. Okay, this is her public key. E comma N is her public key. See here, E comma N. Okay, this encryption is RSA public key encryption. So Bob can't do much with C because from C, we can't extract M. That's the RSA problem assumption. Okay. So what Bob is going to do, he's going to pick a random number X in the range 1 through N, excluding N, and computes X square mod N. Okay, that means Y is a quadratic residue, right? Y is a quadratic residue because Y can be written as X power 2. Okay. So he sends Y to Alice. Okay. And ask Alice to compute the square root of Y. So Alice is going to compute square root of Y. Remember, there are 4 possible square roots in this context because N is a composite number made of 2 primes P and Q. Okay. So, but Alice is going to just compute one of the square roots. And she computes 4 square roots, but she's going to send one of the square roots to Bob. Okay. Bob then checks whether did he receive the square root of Y to be X or minus X. Why is this case? Okay. Let's think through this. Alice is receiving from Bob Y, right? Okay, and then she's computing square root of Y. So square root of Y is nothing but X, right? That's the definition of square root. Okay, but remember, square root of Y, there are 4 possible square roots of Y. Okay, square root of Y can be some number X1, X2, X3, X4. We don't know exactly which one, but she's going to pick one of the 4 possible square roots and send it to Bob. Okay, what Bob is going to do is he's going to, out of these 4 square roots, he's only going to send one of those square roots, right? Let's call the square root to be Z. We don't know whether Z is X1, X2, X3, X4. Let's call it Z. She sends that to Bob. What Bob is going to do is he's going to check whether the incoming square root is equal to X or minus X. Okay, if it is X or minus X, it's useless for Bob because he can't factor N. Remember, in order for Bob to decrypt, he needs to know the private key. So, which is only possible if the square root computation reveals a root other than X or minus X. We talked about it in the previous segments. Okay, so I'm going to make an assumption that you watched the previous segment, why this condition is important to satisfy. Okay, the condition that Z is not equal to X or minus X, then he goes ahead and factor the number N. Once he factor the number N using the GCD of X plus Z comma N, he will find the private keys P and Q from that, and then he will go ahead and decrypt the message. Okay. So what is the reason the message M is oblivious in this context? Why would the sender Alice not know whether Bob was able to successfully decrypt the message M or not? The reason is that from the square root that she's sending back to Bob, Alice wouldn't know whether Bob had chosen X1, X2, X3, X4. It could be any one of those 4. Let's say X1 is X, X2 is minus X. That means x3 and or x4 should be the useful route for Bob to factor. So if Alice is randomly sending one of those four, half useless, half useful, then the probability that Bob can successfully factor is half. Let me put it this way. Alice would only know with 50% confidence whether the message was successfully decrypted by Bob or not. So that's the oblivious part. Okay. So let me quickly show you a demo of this idea. All right. So here we are. What we are doing here is the sender generates a public and private key. Alice generates public and private key. Public key must be generated unique for each transaction in this protocol. So Alice has to generate public and private key, sends the public key, of course, to Bob. Every time she wants to encrypt a message M, she will use RSA to encrypt the message M. In this case, I'm encrypting random message. The receiver in this case, Bob, generates a quadratic residue, right? Y equal to x square mod n means y is a quadratic residue. The sender sends out a square root of y, meaning Alice is computing the square root of y. She can because she knows the prime factors of n, not Bob. And that's the z that I talked about on the whiteboard. And once she sends the z to Bob, Bob checks whether the z is x or minus x. Remember, z square is equal to x square if z is the square root of y. Therefore, Bob will go ahead and decrypt composite number n in order to find the prime factors. We talked about that earlier. If you find two square numbers such that x square is equal to z square mod n, then you could factor n. Bob will go ahead and factor the prime factors of n because he knows two numbers that are squares of each other. This is the part. And then he knows the pi and the d. These things are RSA related. And computes the mod inverse of e comma phi, and then goes ahead and performs the decryption. Okay, I assume you know about how RSA works, so that's why I'm not explaining it in detail. And that's basically it. Let's run it. A 512-bit key, which is small, but for demo purpose, okay. So she sent a message, and Bob says he was able to decrypt. I mean, of course, Alice should not know this message. Message meaning Alice should not know whether Bob was able to decrypt, but I'm printing for demo purpose. Let's do the same. Now, Bob says he's unable to decrypt, unable to decrypt, able to decrypt. See, we sent 4 messages, 2 successfully decryptable and 2 not, which shows that this is an oblivious transfer. That's the idea of this protocol. I hope you were able to see through this idea. So let me quickly recap what we learned. We learned that the sender can use RSA to encrypt a message. The receiver will use quadratic residue concept and ask the sender to compute the square root. The square root is such a way that it's not the trivial square roots. Then the receiver will factor the number n and then go ahead and extract the prime factors. The sender will not know whether factorization was successful or not, only 50% chance of success. That's the reason for oblivious transfer. And you may wonder, why would you need a scenario where the sender will not know whether a message was successfully decrypted or not? That I will cover in the next segment. For now, I wanted to show to you that there's a way for sender to send a message without knowing whether the receiver was able to successfully decrypt or not. That's all. Thank you very much.